I'd been through lockdown drills so many times that they'd become almost boring. Lights off, crouch in the corner away from the door's window, stay silent until the all-clear sounds over the intercom. Routine. Forgettable. Just another mandatory safety procedure at Riverside High. Fourth period chemistry was usually my favorite class. Mrs. Patterson made even the most tedious labs interesting, and I sat next to my friend Derek, which made the time pass faster. We were halfway through a lecture on molecular structures when the lockdown alarm blared through the speakers, that distinctive, harsh tone that made everyone groan. "All right, everyone, you know the drill," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice carrying that familiar mix of annoyance and resignation. She moved quickly to lock the classroom door while we gathered our things and shuffled toward the designated corner. I was wedged between Derek and a girl named Samantha I barely knew, our backs pressed against the cold tile wall. The lights went out. Mrs. Patterson pulled down the shade on the door's window. 24 of us crammed into that small space, some people already pulling out their phones to scroll through social media to pass the time. Then I noticed Mrs. Patterson's face in the dim light seeping from beneath the door. She was staring at her phone, her expression completely changed. The color had drained from her cheeks. Her hand trembled slightly. "Mrs. Patterson?" someone whispered. She looked up at us, and I saw something I'd never seen before in a teacher's eyes during these drills, genuine fear. "This isn't a drill," she said quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. "There are reports of an actual intruder in the building." The atmosphere in that corner shifted instantly. Phones that had been casually held now clutched tighter as students began texting their parents. I heard quiet crying from somewhere behind me. My own heart started hammering against my ribs, so loud I was sure everyone could hear it. Derek grabbed my arm. "This can't be real," he whispered. "This is Riverside. Nothing happens here." But it was real. I could feel it in the way Mrs. Patterson positioned herself between us and the door, in the way my hands had gone cold despite the stuffy warmth of 24 bodies pressed together, in the absolute silence that fell over us as reality sank in. Minutes crawled by. 5, 10, 15. Each second stretched impossibly long. I tried to control my breathing, tried not to think about what might be happening in other parts of the school. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. She'd seen the news. I texted back that I was okay, that I was safe, even though I had no idea if that was true. Then we heard footsteps in the hallway. They weren't running footsteps. They weren't frantic or chaotic. They were slow, deliberate, methodical. The sound of someone taking their time, moving with purpose. The footsteps grew closer. I felt Samantha's hand find mine in the darkness, her palm slick with sweat. Derek had gone completely rigid beside me. No one breathed. The footsteps stopped. We heard a door handle turn somewhere down the hall, the distinct rattle of metal, followed by silence. A pause. Then more footsteps, moving to the next door. Another handle turning. They were checking every classroom, every door, getting closer. My mind raced through terrible scenarios. What if our door didn't hold? What if the lock wasn't strong enough? I thought about my parents, about my little sister, about all the things I'd never said to people I cared about. The footsteps reached our door. I stopped breathing entirely. Time seemed to freeze. I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears, could feel the desperate grip of Samantha's hand crushing my fingers. The handle turned. The door held. Mrs. Patterson had locked it. Thank God, she'd locked it. For a moment, there was nothing. Silence. Then, knock, knock, knock. 3 slow, methodical knocks on our classroom door. "Hello?" a voice called out from the hallway. Male, calm, friendly even. "This is campus security. The situation is under control. You can come out now." My eyes found Mrs. Patterson in the darkness. She was staring at the door, her finger pressed against her lips in an urgent gesture. "Stay quiet. Don't move. Don't make a sound." "Hello?" the voice called again, a little louder now. "I know you're in there. It's safe now. We need to evacuate the building. Please open the door." It sounded so reasonable, so authoritative, so official. I saw some students starting to shift, starting to stand, ready to trust that voice. Mrs. Patterson's eyes went wide. She shook her head violently, her fingers still pressed against her lips. We stayed silent. The voice outside changed. The friendly tone cracked slightly. "This is a direct order. Open this door immediately." Still, we didn't move. Mrs. Patterson held her ground, one hand braced against the door as if her body alone could keep it closed. "Fine," the voice said, no longer friendly at all. The single word carried a cold edge that made my blood freeze. Footsteps moved away, down the hall, to the next door. We sat in that darkness for another 30 minutes before we heard real sirens, real police voices, real security clearing the building room by room. When we were finally let out by actual officers who showed us their badges, who had other faculty members with them vouching for their identity, the hallway looked like a crime scene from a movie. Police everywhere, students crying, parents arriving in waves. Later, they told us the full story. There had been an intruder, a former student named Cameron Briggs, who'd been expelled 2 years earlier for threatening a teacher. He'd planned this meticulously. He'd attacked a real campus security officer in the parking lot, stolen his uniform and radio, concealed his identity. But the detail that haunts me, the one I can't shake even now, months later, is this. 6 other classrooms opened their doors. 6 classrooms trusted that calm, authoritative voice. 6 classrooms full of students and teachers who believed they were being evacuated by security. Mrs. Patterson's instinct, her refusal to trust, saved us. When I asked her later how she knew, she said she didn't know for certain. She said something just felt wrong about the voice, about the way the person knocked, about the timing. I think about that often, how close we came, how thin the line was between safety and catastrophe, how 24 of us made it home that day because one teacher decided to trust her gut over a convincing voice on the other side of a door. I can't do lockdown drills anymore without my hands shaking. They're not boring now. They're not routine. Because now I know that sometimes the drill becomes real. And sometimes the person knocking might not be there to save you. Being a junior volunteer aide during study hall wasn't glamorous, but it got me out of sitting in the library for 50 minutes. I delivered messages between teachers, restocked supplies, ran small errands. Most days it was mindless work that let me listen to music with one earbud in while I walked the quiet hallways. That Tuesday morning in October started normally. I'd just delivered a stack of attendance sheets to the main office when the lockdown alarm sounded that piercing tone that cuts through everything. I was in C Wing, the oldest section of our school, built back in the 70s and never properly renovated. The hallway stretched long and empty ahead of me, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. My heart rate spiked immediately. Protocol was clear. Get to the nearest classroom, lock the door, wait for the all clear. The nearest door was C-119, at the very end of the hall, Mr. Voss's art classroom. I'd never actually been inside. Mr. Voss was one of those teachers everyone knew about, but few students actually had eccentric, private, teaching mostly advanced art electives. He'd been on medical leave for the past 3 weeks, and the room had stayed locked and empty. Except today, somehow, the door was unlocked. I didn't have time to question it. I slipped inside, turned the lock behind me, and pressed my back against the wall beside the door, trying to catch my breath. The emergency lighting kicked in dim red bulbs that cast the room in an eerie, shadowy glow. As my eyes adjusted, I started to really see the space around me. Student artwork covered every wall, which was normal for an art room. But something about these pieces felt wrong. I stepped closer to examine a charcoal drawing near the door, a portrait of a face, but distorted. The eyes too large and multiplied across the forehead and cheeks. The expression seemed to shift depending on the angle I viewed it from, sometimes neutral, sometimes screaming. Another drawing showed figures that seemed incomplete, their bodies trailing off into shadow and smoke, but with meticulous detail on their hands reaching, grasping, clawing. The technical skill was impressive, but the subject matter made my skin crawl. I moved deeper into the classroom, past rows of empty desks, toward Mr. Voss's large wooden desk at the front. Papers were scattered across its surface, sketches, notes, printed photographs. In the dim red light, I could see strange symbols drawn repeatedly in what looked like charcoal or black chalk. Circles within circles, geometric patterns that hurt to look at for too long, words in languages I didn't recognize. This wasn't normal art teacher stuff. My eyes caught on the corkboard mounted on the wall behind his desk. It was covered in photographs, dozens of them, maybe hundreds, all overlapping and pinned haphazardly. I stepped closer, squinting in the poor light. They were candid shots. Students in the hallways between classes, students at their lockers, students in the cafeteria, in the parking lot, walking to their cars. None of them posed, none of them aware they were being photographed. And then I saw my own face. My photo, printed in color, pinned near the center of the board, and circled in red marker. Beneath it, a date written in neat handwriting. September 23rd, 2 weeks ago. The day before Mr. Voss went on medical leave. My hands went numb. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and examined the board more closely. I recognized other students, Sarah Chen, who sat behind me in calculus, Marcus Webb, who was in my gym class, the new transfer student, Emma Rodriguez, all circled in red, all with dates written beneath them. I didn't want to keep looking, didn't want to discover anything more, but I couldn't stop myself. A journal sat open on the desk. I flipped through pages filled with observations. Subject M arrives at north entrance, 7:42 a.m. consistently. Parks in spot B17. Walks alone. No close friends observed. Subject K uses east stairwell to avoid crowds. Lunch period spent in library, always corner table. Vulnerable to approach in isolation. Subject M. Subject K. Subject E. He'd been watching students, documenting their routines, studying their patterns, planning something. My breathing came faster. The 47 minutes I'd spent locked in that room became an archaeological dig through someone's disturbing obsession. I found more than I wanted to see. In the supply closet at the back of the room, I noticed a false panel in the ceiling just slightly misaligned with the others. I dragged a stool over and pushed it aside. Behind it was a narrow crawlspace, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through, running along the ceiling of the hallway outside. He'd been watching us from above. The collection of items in a locked drawer I pried open with scissors from his desk made everything worse. A phone case with a unicorn sticker that I remembered seeing on Sarah Chen's phone weeks ago. Someone's student ID card for a girl I didn't recognize. A silver bracelet that looked familiar, though I couldn't place it immediately. Trophies. When the all clear finally sounded 50 minutes after I'd entered that room, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door. I ran straight to the principal's office and told them everything. Campus security was there within 5 minutes. The police arrived shortly after. They photographed everything. They bagged evidence. They asked me questions for hours. Mr. Voss was arrested at his home that same afternoon. The local news reported it. Vaguely, teacher taken into custody on suspicion of stalking, but didn't give details. The school administration kept it quiet, didn't want to cause panic. But I learned more through my parents, who knew someone in the district office. They found extensive surveillance equipment at his house, more photographs, thousands of them, going back years, plans, detailed and methodical, that suggested he'd been building toward something terrible. The bracelet I'd found in his drawer? It belonged to Emma Rodriguez, the transfer student. Except she hadn't transferred by choice. She'd filed a report about a teacher making her uncomfortable, watching her constantly, following her to her car. The school had dismissed it as paranoia. She'd left to escape him. The lockdown that day had been a false alarm, just a malfunctioning motion sensor in the gymnasium that triggered the system automatically. Pure coincidence. But my being trapped in that classroom, my discovery of everything Mr. Voss had been doing, wasn't coincidence. It was proximity to horror, to something that could have become much worse if he'd continued. The police told my parents I'd likely prevented something terrible. That whatever he'd been planning, we'd never have to find out now. But I still have nightmares about those photographs on the corkboard, about seeing my own face among them, about the dates he'd written and what they might have meant. I think about Emma Rodriguez, who'd tried to warn people and been dismissed. And I think about that crawl space in the ceiling, about all the times I'd walked down Sea Wing's hallway without knowing someone was watching from above, documenting my movements, adding me to his collection. The art room is locked now, permanently. They're renovating it over winter break, erasing all traces of what it was. But I'll always remember what I found in that dim red emergency light. The 47 minutes I spent discovering that monsters don't always look like intruders breaking into schools. Sometimes they're already inside, wearing a teacher's badge, hiding in plain sight. AP English was usually my most engaging class. Miss Delacroix had a way of making even the driest literature feel relevant, urgent, alive. That Thursday afternoon we were discussing Shirley Jackson's The Lottery, dissecting the story's themes of tradition and violence, when the lockdown alarm interrupted her mid-sentence. Everyone groaned. Another drill. We'd already had 2 that semester, one for nearby police activity involving a pursuit that passed within blocks of campus, another for a gas leak in the science building. Routine disruptions that cost us class time but never felt truly dangerous. We moved through the familiar motions. Lights off, door locked, window shade pulled down. 31 of us arranged ourselves in the corner away from the door, a practiced choreography we'd performed too many times to take seriously. I ended up sitting next to my best friend Maya, who was texting her boyfriend Josh even as we settled into position. Josh was a senior like us, but had a different lunch period, different class schedule. Right now he was in the North Building, in Mr. Hendrick's auto shop class, probably covered in grease and grateful for the break. Josh says they're in lockdown too, Maya whispered to me, her phone screen illuminating her face in the darkened classroom. Obviously, he's asking if I know what's going on. Just another drill, I whispered back, though Miss Delacroix shot us a warning look. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Longer than usual. Maya's phone buzzed. She looked at it, and I saw her expression change. The casual amusement drained away, replaced by something that looked like fear. What? I mouthed silently. She angled her phone so I could read Josh's text. This isn't a drill. We heard screaming from the hallway, and what sounded like firecrackers. Mr. Hendrick is barricading the door with tool cabinets. Stay safe. I love you. My stomach dropped. Firecrackers. Everyone knew what that really meant, what that particular euphemism implied. Maya's hands trembled as she texted back. Miss Delacroix noticed our distress and moved closer, reading over our shoulders. Her face went pale. Another text from Josh. Someone's pounding on our door. They're yelling that they're hurt, that they need help. Mr. Hendrick is telling us to stay quiet, not to respond. God, they sound really hurt though. Maya's breathing came faster. I grabbed her hand, squeezed it. Around us, other students were checking their phones, receiving messages from friends and family, news spreading that this was real. The texts from Josh continued sporadically over the next 30 minutes, each one ratcheting up our terror. Still here. We can hear police sirens outside, but no one's come to us yet. It's so dark. I'm scared. He sent a photo, just darkness, punctuated by the silhouettes of students huddled together, barely visible in what must have been the faint light from phone screens. The pounding stopped, but now we can hear something in the ceiling. The auto shop has exposed ductwork, and someone or something is moving up there above us. Mr. Hendrick looks terrified. Maya was crying silently, her whole body shaking. I held her, reading each message as it came through, my own fear building with every word. Can hear them crawling, right above where we're sitting. Please God, please. They're at the vent. We can see the grate moving. Tell my parents I love them. Then nothing. The messages stopped completely. Maya tried calling. It went straight to voicemail. She texted no response. Again and again, desperate attempts to reach him met with silence. He's okay, I told her, not believing my own words. His phone probably died, or they made everyone turn them off. But I could see in her eyes that she didn't believe me either. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. 20 minutes since his last text. 30. 45. The lockdown continued, but we could hear activity outside, now multiple sirens, helicopter sounds, the muffled chaos of a major emergency response. When the all-clear finally sounded nearly 2 hours after it began, Maya was on her feet instantly, running before Miss Delacroix could stop her. I chased after her, through the hallways filling with confused and frightened students, toward the North Building where Josh's classroom was located. Police barriers blocked our path. Officers were everywhere. EMTs loading equipment, a circus of flashing lights, and urgent voices. Maya tried to push through, screaming Josh's name, demanding to know if he was okay. Miss, you need to step back, an officer told her firmly. My boyfriend is in there, Josh Martinez. Is he okay? Please, I need to know if he's okay. That's when we saw the EMTs emerging from the building's side entrance, a stretcher between them, a white sheet covering the body. Maya's scream cut through every other sound. She collapsed, and I barely caught her, both of us sinking to the pavement while she wailed his name over and over. Students from the auto shop class were being led out in small groups, wrapped in shock blankets despite the warm afternoon. I searched every face desperately, looking for Josh, needing him to be alive, needing that body under the sheet to be someone else. And then I saw him, Josh, walking out with Mr. Hendrick's arm around his shoulders, alive but looking shattered. His face was pale, his eyes hollow. "Josh!" Maya broke free from my grip and ran to him. He saw her, and something in his expression cracked. They collided in an embrace, both sobbing. I felt a relief so intense it made me dizzy. He was alive. Whatever had happened, he'd survived it. But over the next few hours, as the police interviewed students and pieced together the timeline, we learned the truth. And it was somehow worse than what we'd imagined. The body under the sheet wasn't Josh. It was the actual intruder, a disturbed individual who'd breached the auto shop, who'd terrorized the students inside for nearly 2 hours before being confronted by police. But here's what broke Maya, what shattered something fundamental in both of them. Josh's phone had been taken from him 20 minutes into the lockdown. All those texts Maya received the updates about what was happening. The photo of students in the dark, the messages about something in the ceiling had been sent by the intruder. Someone who'd taken Josh's phone and used it to torment his girlfriend. Someone who'd crafted messages designed to sound like Josh, who'd described real details about the classroom to make it convincing, who'd wanted to see if they could manipulate someone on the outside. Josh had been forced to watch, helpless, as this person scrolled through his messages with Maya, learned his texting patterns, crafted responses that sounded like him. The final messages, "Tell my parents I love them," had been sent while holding a weapon to Josh's head, making him watch as they pretended to be him saying goodbye. A psychological game, a test of their ability to convincingly impersonate someone, to see if they could maintain the deception, to feed on the fear they were creating, not just in that classroom but beyond it. The intruder had been shot by police during the final breach, killed in the confrontation. They never learned the full extent of what had been planned, what the end game was supposed to be. But the damage was done. Josh couldn't use his phone for weeks afterward. The idea of texting felt violating, contaminated by the memory of someone else's hands holding it, someone else's words pretending to be his. Maya couldn't trust text messages anymore. Every message carried the possibility of deception, of someone pretending to be someone they weren't. And I couldn't shake the terrible question that haunted all of us. What if we'd done something different? What if Maya had called the police with information from those texts? What if we'd tried to act on what we thought we knew? We'd been frozen, waiting, trusting that the situation was being handled while receiving real-time updates that felt like we were connected to what was happening. But we were connected to a lie, to manipulation, to someone's twisted experiment in psychological torture. The school brought in counselors. There were assemblies about safety, about trauma, about healing, but nothing addressed the specific horror of what had happened, the violation of trust, the weaponization of communication, the way technology had been turned into a tool of torment. Josh and Maya are still together, but something changed between them. There's a hesitancy now, a gap where perfect trust used to be. And every time my phone buzzes with a message, I remember those hours in the darkened classroom, reading over Maya's shoulder as someone else pretended to be Josh, as they described horror from the inside while orchestrating it themselves. Sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't what actually happens. It's what you believe is happening, fed to you by someone who knows exactly how to make you feel helpless, how to keep you frozen and afraid while they play out their sick game. The lockdown ended. The threat was neutralized. Everyone survived, but we're all still locked inside our own minds, replaying those messages, wondering what else we might have done if we'd known the truth, carrying the weight of manipulation disguised as connection.